Hello, my name is Richard Spindler and I'm a mathematics instructor. And this is the second video of three to help students study better. The first video was about mindset and attitude as well as learning goals. This video is to help you learn techniques to learn and understand the information better as you first encounter the material, for example, when reading your textbook or perhaps in class. So let's talk about that a little bit. We'll focus first on readings, and similar techniques will apply toward classes. So let's suppose you're assigned a couple of a section or two for reading before class. Now, my suggestion is before you do the reading straight through, just get a lay of the land by reading the introduction and conclusion and perhaps some key points in between. This will give you a kind of a general idea, overview of what it's going to be about. Now, when reading, many students more or less do a surface reading. When you read the material, there are better techniques than that, than just reading straight through it. My suggestion is stop regularly and ask yourself some questions. And I've got some examples here. But let me just say, when I say stop regularly, how often you stop will depend on the material, it'll depend on the difficulty of the material for you, it'll depend a little bit on your individuality with reading. But let's just say, for example, you might stop every 2 pages or something like that. The kind of questions that you want to ask yourself are those that will help you think about the material more. For example, you might ask, what are the important ideas? How do the examples illustrate these ideas? What are important terms, definitions, processes, procedures? What do they mean? Do they make sense? These questions, and you should answer them as you go, and my suggestion is do not go back and look at the text while you're asking these. See if you can think about them on your own, because you just read it, right? So see if you can answer these. If you can't answer any of them, then you really are doing just a surface reading and you're not thinking about it enough. But hopefully you can answer some of those, and after you've tried that, then yes, go back and look at those couple of pages and say, oh yeah, that's what this was about. Okay? And then maybe ask yourself again some questions. And then continue on with your reading. And my suggestion is you should use a similar approach during or soon after class. Now, I know oftentimes during class may be difficult because the class may be very fast-paced. There may not be much of time or a break or a pause to help to answer, for you to ask these questions of yourself. Hopefully, though, your instructor is asking you these kinds of questions as you go to help you understand them and test your understanding. Other kinds of questions are related to your prior understanding of the topic. And by prior understanding, I mean, what information you know and understand about that topic already before you're, say, reading a textbook. Some type of questions you might want to ask yourself are, how is this similar or different from other information you know about the topic? Was my prior understanding about this topic accurate or inaccurate? Do I need to change my prior thinking on this topic? Perhaps what you had thought about that topic according to the text or the class wasn't quite right. So how are you going to reconcile that? You should really actively think about that and reconcile it and hopefully come up with a stronger and more accurate understanding of the information in your brain. Okay, let me give you a little example. I like birding and I like identifying birds and understanding birds. And let's say I'm reading in a book, what a finch looks like, and I'm reading about the finch and its habitat also. And I read, oh yeah, that finches have large beaks. That's interesting. I know from another time that I was doing some reading or something that finches like seeds. So that's my prior understanding. Oh, well, that makes sense. Having large beaks helps break up seeds. So you see how I'm actively thinking about what I just read about finches with what I already knew about them. The very act of doing that helps you understand and helps you recall that topic, in my case about birds, better. Even if you can't recall or answer the questions completely, just the act of trying to do it, of trying to answer those questions and trying to think about it will help you. Of course, if you can't answer them completely, then okay, go back and look at them some more. And maybe you might have to ponder your prior understanding with what you just read. And again, I suggest you use these kinds of techniques with your classes also. So what I'd like you to do now is, without looking back at the last few slides, answer these questions. And again, do not look back, okay? Now let's talk a little bit about active learning. Here's an interesting quote. Learning should be an active process. Too often, students come to school to watch their teachers work. What this really means is that learning arises from doing and thinking, not watching others do it or tell you about it. You need to be actively doing it and trying it, okay? So that's what I state here, basically. You want to be actively thinking and acting on information. So the point is that this will help you understand it better by thinking about it, but it'll also improve your recall in the future. And those two ideas reinforce each other. Here are some techniques in active learning that will help you with that. One is called elaboration, which is finding meaning. The other is generation, where you generate your ideas about the topic. Experiential learning, which is sort of like a generation, but it provides the learning in a realistic setting, which hopefully gives you greater motivation and interest in the topic. And then reflecting on your learning as you go. So let's talk about some of these active learning techniques. When studying, many students just want to reread their notes or textbook. Just read it several times. That is not a terribly effective way. It might imprint on you in your short-term memory some facts and procedures and things to remember for a little while, but it doesn't connect deeply enough really for you to remember it long-term or to really understand it deeply. Okay, so that is not a terribly effective way to study. So instead, you want to be actively thinking about it. And one way is to explain the topic in your own words without looking at your notes or the textbook. See if you can explain as much about the topic in your own words and connect it to other related areas you already know something about or other areas in the course. I'll give you an example. For example, in birding, I would explain to another birder what a particular bird looks like and sounds like. I might use representative sounds like cheer, cheer, cheer for a cardinal. I might discuss its habitat, what food it likes, and so forth. The more I can do that on my own, and the more that I can connect those different topics about the birds with each other, then I'm really strengthening my understanding and strengthening my recall about birds. And when you can do that, you really, really do know it much better. There are other techniques along these lines, and one is drawing concept maps. And that's where you'd write different concepts about the topic on a sheet of paper, whatever you can remember, and then you connect them with lines that are related to each other in some ways. And you can find examples of these through a web search. Just do a search on concept map, and you'll find various examples of what these look like. Other active learning techniques, and these are related to generation, is first, try solving problems and answering questions before you are shown how to solve them or answer the questions. Now, you might ask, doesn't someone have to show me how to do something before I can learn how to do it? Not necessarily. This might seem paradoxical to you, but there is some research indicating that students who try first, before being shown it, understand the material better than those who are just shown how to do it or answer it right away. For example, if you're about to read a problem example in the text before class, before reading the full example, see if you can answer some of the problem before you read how it is done. Hopefully in class, your instructor is asking you to try thinking about topics before you are told directly what to do or think about it. Okay, this is a very helpful technique to deepen your thinking about a topic. Experiential learning is important if you want to be truly proficient. I mean, after all, hopefully you're going to use the material for something, right? And experiential learning gives you a setting where you're actually going to use it maybe for something real and important. Okay? It'll deepen your understanding, and that experience will actually help you remember it much better. An example is when I go into the fields and woods, testing myself in all the variety of ways I could hear and see birds. After all, when I go in the fields, the birds don't look or sound exactly like they are in the book or the recordings. So there I'm really testing myself much more in a much more realistic setting. And you'll find this in any subject area. The reality will often be different or messier and more complex than what you've seen in a textbook or classroom. I would suggest, if you can, see if you can find undergraduate research opportunities which provide this experiential learning, or perhaps internship options. Both of the two techniques we just talked about, the first one about trying problems, courses that use these type of techniques are often called inquiry-based learning courses, perhaps problem-based learning also. And similarly, project-based learning provides experiential type learning in the courses. Finally, the last active learning technique we could talk about here is reflection. Suppose you took a test and you did well on some topics on the test and some maybe not so well. After test, rather than just stuffing it in your folder and knowing your score, you should do more than that. You should review it and look at it. What was the good, the bad, and the ugly? Why? What topics should I try to learn better? What will I try to improve on in those topics? How will I improve? All of these questions will help you ponder what it was that you did well on, which you should celebrate, and what you didn't do so well on. And they'll also help you think of a plan of how to improve on those topics. And it might even help you study better for your next test. And you could do these not just after tests, but after class. You think back on a class, I really didn't get that part in class, and then you can think about how you might learn that and get ready for the next class. So what I can do is, without looking back at the last few slides, pause the video and answer these questions. And that is it for this video. I want to emphasize that the topics in this video are extremely important for understanding and really deepen your learning about the subject areas, especially the active learning ideas. The next video will be specific techniques just to help you with recall, how to remember topics and some of the information that you're learning in your courses. Thank you very much.